Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is actually the official launch, if you would, of 101 compositions. We're celebrating the first 100 years of the Conservatorium in 2015, and we're adding that one towards the future, if you would. I believe it's a very exciting venture, not only for the Conservatorium, but Australia, and I hope for the global world of music. With us today on our right is our very special guest, John Corigliano, and we are so happy you are here and took up this offer. Just wanted to say a little bit, this project grew out of a compelling question for the con: how to best celebrate 101 years, if you would, but the 100th anniversary in 2015. It's the same time period as the Botanic Gardens in 2016. We'll be celebrating a major anniversary. There are many national anniversaries, Gallipoli. In a nutshell, the answer was, let's bring forth creativity. 101 new music works that can help shape music appreciation and the future of music making, if possible. John, if you wouldn't mind asking the question you've been asked 1,000 times, what is it about Bob Dylan's poetry that you brought that inspired you from Mr. Tambourine Man?
It was actually, I was commissioned by Carnegie Hall to write a cycle for soprano and piano for Sylvia McNair. And I wanted to do a contemporary text, American text, but I also wanted to write a text that reached out to everybody. And it's really hard to do that because poetry has such a niche of its own, like classical music does, that it's really hard to find great poetry that speaks to everyone, young people, old people, everybody. And I was talking this over with a friend, and a friend of mine said, why don't you look into the poetry of the songs of Bob Dylan? And finally arrived at this 7-cycle, 34-minute cycle called Mr. Tambourine Man. In them, I found a richness of words that, for example, the Chimes of Freedom, that could have been written by someone like Walt Whitman. And I built the piece having a prelude, which is Mr. Tambourine Man, to build the times of the 60s, and then 5 settings of becoming more and more aware politically of the world around him, and then a benediction, Forever Young. And so this cycle goes through its 5 poems of awareness. And I felt very strongly that it was the right thing for me. And I wrote it for piano, devilishly difficult piano part, but piano. And then was asked to arrange it for full orchestra by the Minnesota Orchestra. One of the things I've never written for is an ensemble called the Pierrot Ensemble. The Pierrot Ensemble is the modern music equivalent of the string quartet. I thought, well, this is going to fall right into place. And I found that in rethinking it for Pierrot Ensemble, because of the limits of the ensemble, it really became very tricky. It was a tough orchestration to do.
Do you have any sense worldwide if there's some kind of golden era, or if we're moving into...
It is a golden era. It's so funny because everybody says the symphony is dying and opera is dying and, you know, it's all over. Well, there are more young composers now than ever before. I think it's the internet. Simple. I think it's the internet. I think young people can get information now that they couldn't get before. When I started composing, the LP record had just been invented.
Have you had any sense of feedback from Dylan himself as to what he thinks about your music?
No sense. The only person I spoke to, and my publisher spoke to, was Bob Dylan's manager. And the hardest job was to convince him what it is I was doing, that I was not doing an arrangement of his melodies for, you know, piano and voice in a classical style, that I was not using his melodies, that I was composing new melodies. But in classical music, from Bach on, words have meaning, and when you get to the point of emotion of a word or the declamation of a word, you set it that way. Now that's the end of the story, because you know, once I got permission, I wrote it. I sent him to him with a letter, but you know, he's up there somewhere.
It's been wonderful to work on this project, and for everybody who's interested in it, we have a stellar list of composers, starting with Mr. Corigliano, but including international composers, Australian composers. I do think it's one of the most exciting projects and certainly the largest in terms of a curatorial role of Australian composition.
I agree completely. I don't know of any other project like it. And what I like is it's not just scaled to the big composers that get performed by the big orchestras. Then it has another grade for less well-known composers, and even for young composers, so that you can work your way up the ladder.
So here we are, up and running with a range of eminent composers, several signed on and others in discussion. I think it's fair to say we're pretty well ahead and very excited about the challenges this will bring for the conservatorium, the faculty, staff, students, the capabilities, and also what that will deliver. The final list will cover all genres, so this isn't just classical music. There will be rock, pop, even a bit of touch of rap, a ballet if we can bring that together, and 2 operas in this mix.